I was sitting at Lorelei, I thought so. The song ended, and there was a moment, and I heard the voice from behind me. Wow. That is a wow. It is always a gift when you are here, and we've got a new tenor every time you come. This is your cousin, right? Have him come back every time. Woo! That was fantastic, fantastic. So how would it be if we held the thought and the idea that love would win, that no matter what obstacle you are facing, with the courage and the strength of a soldier to be an ambassador for love, that love will make the way clear. That's what we teach. The rest is all commentary. Everything on top of that is commentary on the fact that we are the presence of love, and love showing up as strength, as courage, as determination, as whatever it takes to make this world come back home to the place of oneness that we teach. We belong to each other, and we will not deter ourselves or our families or our culture from that journey. No matter how difficult or dark it might get, as one of the songs said this morning, we will face the dragons, and we'll face them head on. And we have a lot of dragons. This is the third week in a series, a 5-part series on collective consciousness, where we're taking a look at the collection of thoughts that we have ever had since we entered this planet Earth, the ideas, the notions, the judgments, the experiences, the opinions that have been integrated into the subconscious mind of our belief system individually, but understanding that we are intricately connected to the collective. That since the beginning of time, there has been a collection of ideas and thoughts and experiences and judgments that is driving the human race as we know it today. Week 1, we began with the collective pathos, the emotional body and the emotions that are wanting expression and the emotions that we're wanting to let go of. And we took full and complete responsibility for our own emotions and took responsibility for the emotions of the entire whole. Last week, we got a little bit preachy. I hope it wasn't too preachy on you. We don't do that much here, but we talked about the ethos, the divine ethical character of our nature. And some of you were a little bit uncomfortable when I said something to the effect that the government as we know it today is a reflection of the ethos of the collection of the people that the government politicians are serving. I hope you sat with that and did a little bit of homework to take complete and total responsibility for your own self and to know that the thought, the feeling, the expression, the actions that you are taking are absolutely informing the whole. As it is within you, it will be in the outer as well, because it cannot be separate. And so when we say, be the living Christ, be like St. Patrick, be like St. Francis, be like any saint you want to be, and know that the energy you're putting into the system is changing the system from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. They will change when we change. The world will change when we change. We will see things differently when we see things differently. And so logos is today is a logos. It's an interesting paradox because logos, depending on what camp you're in, depending on where the perspective you're looking at the word logos, it means something completely different. From the world of philosophy, it is the human ability to reason, to discuss, to use logic in a dialogue format, argument, persuasion based only and completely upon facts, upon deductive and inductive reasoning, upon evidence, upon concrete, provable theory. Anybody here ever have a provable theory that then you found later on in life was not necessarily the truth? Anybody believe something for your entire life and you found, oh my gosh, I believed it for 10, 20 years and it's not really true? But that is important that we have a foundation of a house that we build our common humanity on, an intellectual base of our current body of knowledge. How many people here ever believed the world was flat? Or the earth was the center of the universe? You see, there were spiritual people and scientific people that came together to say there might be a different reality that we need to look at. There might be a different truth. But there's a whole realm of philosophy that says it's only based upon facts. And so I say the logos from the realm of philosophy is show me the money. Prove it. Is your faith system, I don't believe on that. I don't take things on faith, not on mere opinion. Your justified belief is only justified if you can show me the money. That's the logos, the intellectual property of the human race. Then there's a whole spiritual side, completely different. How many people remember the first chapter of the book of John? What does it say? In the beginning was and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Good thing I remember what it was because I had notes here and I can't find it. All I've got are a bunch of Irish jokes up here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A more accurate translation from the original Aramaic is logos. It wasn't the word. Some man put that in there at some point, or a collection of men say it's word. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. And so there's a whole spiritual bent, philosophical aside, that says that the logos, they would use it as the name Christ. Since the beginning of time, the Christ has existed. In Unity, we say it's the veritable presence of God. It is the energy that goes between us and the entire cosmos. It is life itself. So we've got the intellect, and we've got sort of an intuitive faculty. What Unity says is the individuality, the unique way that you express the Christ, is also the logos. It is the energy that we all share. It is the spirit that we all share. How in the world can we bring those two factions together? Can science and spirituality live in the same field? Here at Unity, we say if they do not exist in the same field, you're out of balance. There must be a left brain and a right brain involved in the dialogue. There must absolutely be a balanced system. We are created in the image and after the likeness of God itself, with the ability to manifest and create. And to create anything in your life, the left brain and the right brain must be dancing as partners. A divine masculine, a divine feminine must be in balance. There must be the intellect, which is a gift of God, but there must also be an intuition, which is also a gift of God. So that's a little bit heady. So being the minister that always looks at how to break concepts down into practical and applicable rubber meets the road spirituality, I've invited a couple friends to come up here and to talk with me. We have a couple of doctors in our midst in this congregation, and I want to speak specifically about the logos of spirituality and the logos of the intellect as incredible partners for the healing of not only our bodies, not only our emotional body, our mental body, but the entire human race. To use, they are practitioners of wholeness that use both faculties in their practice. And so I would like to invite up to the platform right now. I see one of them. I know Dr. Wendy Jones is here. Please welcome Dr. Wendy Jones and Dr. Robert Love. I'll make sure your microphones are on. There we go. Robert told me that this is the only green shirt he had, but he put a coat over it. We're at church that flannel is absolutely okay.
Apologize for wearing flannel on the stage.
But thank you for wearing green today. I don't feel so alone. This is the only clean shirt I had that was green, so it's the one we got dealt with today. So in 1 minute or less, we're going to play with this idea with these two wonderful practitioners, and many of you in this community have gone to their offices, to their spaces, and sat at the feet of their knowledge, their intellect with medicine, both as chiropractors in a different realm, but also deeply spiritual beings committed to a spiritual practice. So, for the sake of time, we'll get to the big questions to give you more time. Question number one, in 1 minute or less, what is it you do?
First of all, I want to thank you for giving me a whole entire minute to put 30 years of experience into. So the Reader's Digest version is I am a catalyst, and I help people heal. I help them try and hold themselves. I do it as a chiropractor, and I use my intuitive nature. I've learned to lean back on that to help people discover their ability to heal.
Beautiful. So I always think it's a loaded question because I wear a lot of hats. Lately, a new thing is I'm a new father, so I'm doing a lot of that. Can't get enough good energy to that boy, so we'll bring that up. I'm also I'm a minister. I'm a doctor. I'm a professor. I'm a creator. My wife says sometimes maybe I should slow down with the creating because I tend to wear a lot of hats, and it basically means I'm a really, really well overqualified janitor. So I find ways to create and create conversations in community and healing, and I like to dance in the intersection of where man the physical meets man the spiritual.
So both these great, wonderful people and congregants of Unity North have had years and years and years of study where they learned through the faculty of their mind and their intellect cutting-edge concepts of how to heal our body, how to be healthy, wonderful beings. Now, as hard as that question was, here's an even harder one. In 1 minute or less, what is your personal belief system? This is the elevator speech we talked about a few weeks ago. 1 minute or less, what is your spiritual foundation?
Well, I've been attending Unity for at least 10 years now, and I really have embraced the idea that we are all part of a greater, bigger thing than just each individual is. And in part of knowing that, I've also embraced that we are divine beings. And this was a really, I think, a hard place for me to get to, and really hasn't been with me all that long, that we are all God, and we all, that exists within us. And we're made in the likeness and image of God, and that makes us divine beings. And if each one of us is a divine being, then we should recognize that in everyone else as well. Therefore, treating each other as that, as the gods that we are, and as the powerful beings that we are. I just also want to mention, as part of that, that I make it a practice to meditate daily. I don't even get out of bed. My feet don't hit the floor, despite the fact that my cat is whining for breakfast. I do not get out of bed before meditating, and it's part of every single day, every day.
So if I can just paraphrase real quickly what I heard you say a little bit, and to put it in alignment with what Unity teaches, every person, every patient that comes into your office, you are seeing the face of God, yes?
I do. As I sit down with each patient that comes in, I get to say, I get to work on God today as Jeremy, or I get to work on Susan. Susan is my God today that I get to be with and work on or help.
So that consciousness precedes the treatment or the diagnosis
Absolutely.
Or the prescription or whatever it is.
It is. It
Very
does.
Cool. Hey, Rob, up to you.
That's awesome. I like that. I'm going to steal some of that. So I participate in what I call the science or the spirituality of existence, and what I mean by that is, here we are, we think, or we think here we are, or we think so here we are. Really, any which way you cut it, if we are here, and that's a truth, then what do we know? So close your eyes for a second. Everybody close your eyes. And imagine just for a second that you were placed on this earth. No cities, no cars, no roads, no books, no smartphones, no internet. Just you on this beautiful earth. What do you know? Who are you? What are you? What do you eat? How do you move? What do you think? When you look up at the cosmos at night and you explore the expanses of the universe, what goes through your mind? When you sit in quiet places and go deep inside, what comes out? Who and what is God, source, connection? And how do you commune with that? Somewhere in there is the unique truth of our existence. And that's what I like to play with most.
So it sounds like when you got a patient coming into your office, and you have a wonderful office of doctors, and your wife is also in that office, although she's a full-time mom now, but she's... But the reality is you're getting people to dig past surface-level things, closing their eyes and first getting in touch with something within themselves. Not only what you see, but what is existing already within them.
Absolutely. And within that, we're both necessarily physical and non-physical beings. And there's rules to both, right? There's rules to physicality and there's rules to non-physicality. And there's an energetic organizing intelligence to lots of categories and levels in the non-physical and the physical. And some of those rules are more bendable than others. Some of those rules are pretty firm. Right? But there's a difference between the physical you and the non-physical you, and there's lots of ways to address and play with both. And I think we'll talk about that more in a minute.
Yeah. So for centuries, science and religion have been pitted against each other as adversaries, as divergent systems. Now you're here today because you've been able to bridge that expanse between those two systems. So in your work, as doctors, How do you balance the relationship between the logos of evidence-based concepts that you learned in school, you learned in your study, and the logos of faith-based healing that relies on a more esoteric spiritual component? How do you balance the intellect and the intuition, your faith and your knowledge in a holistic approach to the healing of anybody who comes into your office? Because there are, throughout history, people who have absolutely said religiously, I don't need to go to the doctor. And there's systems on the planet that say I don't need to ever see a doctor because God will heal me. And we know sometimes the result of that. We also know people who, at Harvard Medical School, and I want to put this in before I let you talk, those who regularly attended, this is from Harvard Medical School, this is scientific data from Harvard, that people who attend spiritual gatherings on a regular basis live longer and healthier lives. There might be something to that. So I'll see you all next Sunday because you'll be much health. That's your prescription for the day. People who do meditation are shown to improve their health. People who think positive thoughts have improved health. And regular attendance in some kind of spiritual practice will lengthen your lifespan and is shown to be a necessary component to the healing process. Those that are engaged in spirituality heal faster. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to throw at the two of you. How do you bridge that gap, and how do you work it into your system of healing?
So I'm going to pick up on what you were saying about meditation improving your lifespan or whatever. And one of the things that they've shown is that meditation helps lengthen your telomeres. And they're responsible for helping your cells reproduce. And reproduce, the longer your telomeres are, the more healthy the cell is that gets reproduced. So
can you tell the ignorant person sitting across from you what a telomere is?
It's a piece of your chromosome. It's at the end of your chromosomes. And so as the cell reproduces, the longer your telomeres are, the healthier the reproduction process is. And so what they're proving now is that you can reverse the aging of your telomeres. So as they age, they get shorter. And now they're showing that meditation can improve them as much as 44%, can lengthen them as much as 44%, which means you can reverse aging. So let me go back now to the original
Dr. Wendy
question.
is actually 147 years old.
Right. Pretty good, huh? So my science background, to answer the question, is that I use in my office as a diagnostician. I always find myself in some kind of diagnostic process, whether it's a spiritual diagnosis or whether it's a physical diagnosis, because I tend to ask a lot of questions. And I think we all should be asking questions, and that's part of our growth. So my background helps me diagnose, because if you come to my office and you have a compound fracture, I'm not going to lay you on my table and start to adjust you. I'm going to send you to the emergency room. So I think that there are priorities that we learn first. And then I take that and I lean back on my intuitive nature, and I start to sense. I just allow a sense of really, what does this person need? Where are they coming from? What's their background? How do I relate to them, and how can I bring them to know what they need to know about their divinity, and then lead them to hold themselves in the best way that they can.
So you're establishing a relationship with their body, the physicality, the matter of this human existence, but you're also establishing a relationship with something beneath the surface of the body, yes?
Something unseen. So that relationship comes sometimes from touch, but it also could come from an energy field. It can come from frequencies. It could come from an instrument. We use all those things in our office.
Rob, same question.
Okay, so going back to the root of the question, I think over the eons, over time, we've done so much damage in the name of ego on both sides, and I get to sit on kind of both sides of this equation at various points in my life. We've done a lot of damage in the name of ego and the patriarchal society, as I sit here as a big old male. And in the name of being right, and that need for certainty and to be right. And so we've declared things to be absolute truths in both arenas, in the religious and the medical arena, because we needed to be right. And everybody, I think, probably mostly did it out of the best interests, maybe not everybody. But it's caused a lot of damage, and we've got a lot of healing to do in that department to recognize the bridge and the togetherness. And one of the ways I think that's really key to doing that is the question that I've been asked in the last couple of years that's really changed the way we practice is, how many simultaneous perspectives can you hold? And that's a trick, right? And the more simultaneous perspectives you can hold, the more outcomes you have access to, and the more creation you can manifest and be a part of, and the more healing that can occur. And when you can recognize, that there are rules to the body, and that's where medical science plays a lot of time. There's rules to physicality, and then there's this animating life force behind it. And there's not just one animating life force. There are multiple organizing intelligences that need to be considered and studied. And my favorite example, not to be overly morbid, but there's a difference between a live me and a dead me. And if you put dead me right in front of me right now, that body would still have all its components. It would still have all the parts. It would still have a complete nervous system, which is one of the things we work with. It would still have all the blood vessels in it. It would still have the brains. It would still have the heart. Everything would be there except for the life force that animates it. But simultaneously, there's a universal life force that's animating atoms, right? Atoms spin, electrons go around a proton. That would still be present. Those cells would still be present in my body. They'd actually be starting a totally separate process called apoptosis, which is the breakdown of cells after death, right? So the atoms are still spinning. There's an organizing intelligence to that. The cells are still operating and doing their nest function. There's an organizing intelligence to that. And I think one of the things that medicine most needs to consider is, how do we work with the life force going through the body? And as a non-physical being, how do you work with your body to have the best expression of your non-physical self? And as a physical being, how do you have the best body to experience to your non-physical self? Because what you can do with this physical form determines your interaction with your non-physical self too.
So, go ahead, Wendy.
I just want to add to what you were saying. If about there being laws, certain laws that govern, but we don't. What if we don't know all the laws yet? Yeah. What if we just think we know the laws? What if we only know part of what it means to be physical or spiritual? I mean, so what about the laws we haven't discovered yet? That's where I think we play a little bit too.
Definitely. Yeah, every time you see a spontaneous healing, it breaks all the rules.
Exactly.
And they happen every day.
All the time.
But, I like to look at every scientific discovery, every discovery of a new law, of a new healing modality, started first with something being intuited in the mind of a scientist in a laboratory. Or somebody sitting in a church who said, maybe there's a greater possibility here. Maybe there is something called the quantum field that both religious people and on the far right of scientific don't want to look at. But maybe there is a 98% universe that we have heard about that is unmeasurable, that realm of possibility that we can dip into from both sides of the equation. So what I'm hearing you both say, we live in a both-and universe, not an either-or universe. That this partnership must absolutely be there between intellect and knowledge and wisdom and intuition as we dip into the pool. Because only thing changes to this face of this planet is a new idea put into the mind of somebody. However intelligent or not they might be, there's something planted into the conscious mind that they swam in that pool and went, wait a minute, look at the diseases that one time were a death sentence. And by the way, I'm not going to picture dead Robert anymore. Cancel that thought. There were things that we said for the longest time, make your peace with your Creator. And somebody had an intuitive faculty that said, no, polio does not kill. I absolutely believe with my whole heart that cancer will be a thing of the past when enough of us dip into the pool and the collective consciousness, the collective logos and intelligence goes, my gosh, God's been knocking at the door. Scripture says I'm standing at the door. The Logos, the Christ is knocking at the door saying, humanity, pay attention. You're letting yourself be limited by a diagnosis that is no longer valid. And when enough of us intuit that and bring that to the surface from the collective, we live in a collective logos that just believes that cancer is a death sentence. Well, I got plenty of people in my life that have disproven that. One that's on this stage every single week. Absolutely. And we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but I am intuiting that we will get there, and we are very, very, very close to that. This is what Einstein had to say about the intuitive mind. Let's read this quote together. You got the quote up there? Let's read it together. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. We're all walking around saying, well, I will believe it when I see it. But the reality is there must be energy on the other side. You will see it when you start to believe it. That must be in partnership. The intuitive mind and the intellect are absolutely partners. And intuition is not wishful hoping. You're not telling people to go out there and just hold a namby-pamby, airy-fairy thought that you're going to be free of cancer. Intuition dips into the field of that quantum field, which is the collection of logos since the beginning of time. The great wisdom exists there that's either forgotten or remembered. And when we swim there, something miraculous happens, and new ideas and new thoughts emerge through the portal of you.
Can I support what you're saying there?
Please.
So we, as people, scientists, whatever beings, we only understand a small percentage of what goes on in DNA. Over 95% of DNA has yet to be figured out. We don't understand it yet. And you're talking about where to play? Where do we go and play? We play there, because that's where all the answers are that we don't know yet.
But the world is telling us to play in limitation. And you, as medical professionals, are saying, let's play in the possibility, not in the limits of what yesterday's truth was.
They used to call that junk DNA because they only understood what the double helix was, and they didn't understand the rest of it. So what I say to people when I expect them to step up to who the divinity that they really are is, do you really think God created junk? Do you really think that the rest of that 90-something% can just be tossed aside, and we only pay attention to, the genetics or the part that we can see? I think there's so much there.
Isn't that just like an ego moment, too? It's like, what's that other 95%? Oh, it's just junk. Yeah. Don't worry about that.
So you're inviting your patients into a healing modality that may not even exist at this point. Absolutely. You've got a foundation for the house, but hey, let's live in the possibility. And Jesus, our master teacher, said, where two or more are gathered in his name, there I am in the midst of them. He's talking about the logos, the Christ essence, the light, the perfection, the wholeness, the wisdom, the prosperity, all that it is. It exists there when you, as a practitioner, and I come in as a patient, and by the way, I have sat in both of their offices and felt miraculous things happening simply because they invited me into a possibility that I didn't necessarily have. Through their wisdom, their studies, and through their seeing me as the Christ, as the Logos, as the very portal to a connection between my human self and my God self.
Yeah, and kicking it up a level, where attention goes, energy flows, right? So what's your focus? What's our focus? What's your focus? What are we looking at, talking about, and trying to affect when you come into the office? I think a lot of times we get so fixated on a diagnosis that we just draw attention and energy to it, and we just claim it, and we own it, and we give it credence, and we give it energy, and it manifests more. So one of the favorite things that we love to do too is work with what's right. Right? So let's look at what's wrong with you. Let's work with everything that's right with you. Let's see what we can create, what kind of health we can stimulate, what we can energize, and what we can bring up in your life, and see if the other falls off and goes away.
Are you identifying as your condition, or are you identifying as who you really are?
So, possibility. We're talking about collective consciousness in this 5-week series. And we are saying we take full and complete responsibility for not only the collection of thoughts at the point of me, but the collection of thoughts since the beginning of time that are running the medical system, that are running the government, that are running our families, that are running our cultures. Is it possible, in your professional opinion and your experience, that in this place of interconnectivity, of human beings, and I say all of creation in life, that when I am making the healing choice, I am making the decision to focus on what is right, that I am affecting what is right at every other layer of existence. What do you think about that? That's kind of, I threw that question, that they weren't prepared to answer that one.
So I'd say 100%. I don't think we can be disconnected, right? As I heal me, I heal we. As we heal we heal all, right? Separation is the illusion. Disconnection is the illusion.
So, in your humble opinion, that when I am focusing on what is wrong out here, I am adding to what is wrong in the collective logos of humanity. And when I focus on what is right out here, the power of positive thinking, and it's not airy-fairy rainbows and puppy dogs that sometimes New Thought gets accused of. It is actually putting into play, into the field, the logos of the God essence. By my thoughts, my feelings, my words, my attention, and my focus, I am affecting reality out here and in here all at the same time. Is that what you would say you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, and probably more. We have learned to believe what we've been told, and I think what we're trying to say is to unlearn some of that, and start to go into what are the possibilities. What are the possibilities? You know, are we really tied to our genetics? I have a sister that said, I got all the bad genes. And she's speaking of herself. And she's overweight and diabetic and on medications and all this stuff. And I have to just kind of let that go sometimes, because I think I got a lot of the same genes she did, but that's just not where I choose to go. I just don't choose to go there.
I have a twin brother, and I swear to God that I got all the handsome and smart genes. He tends to disagree with me just a little bit. So we're dealing with collective consciousness. How have you as practitioners who are on a cutting edge process of growing, not only with your medical knowledge, but with your spiritual knowledge, how have you seen the collective consciousness shift over the last 5 years, 10 years, 50 years to get us to where we are to now? And where do you see that collective consciousness changing 10, 20 years from now?
So personally, I think I've shifted a great deal in trying to see all of the possibilities of our God selves. Truly, we are unlimited. The more we believe that, the more it will start to manifest in our lives and then pervasively in the collective consciousness. What I see on the collective level is a little bit slower, but still substantial. I see that people are starting to realize, as a chiropractor, this is kind of my background, that drugs don't necessarily, they don't keep us healthy. They might keep us alive sometimes, they might save our lives in an instant, but they don't keep us healthy. And I actually heard a radio announcement the other day for a pharmacy that said, you know, we want to give you the drugs that keep you healthy. And I thought, wow, that's just a blatant lie. How do you get away with that? So I see that people are starting to change the idea there and take it more personally, a personal responsibility for who they are and where they are. And they're taking that responsibility in putting themselves first in their health-wise. They're starting to see that if I put myself first and take care of my own health, that I'm much better to the rest of the collective consciousness. I can influence then, how do I take care of my children if I'm the sick one? I see that there's been a shift, and it's not being selfish. It's actually acting in the interest of the greater good.
To use unity language, we teach a lot here in this spiritual environment about cause and effect, and that the world is so concerned about the effects that we've forgotten the cause, and that's where the root is. And both these, at one point, I'll be honest with you, in my life, where I grew up, chiropractors, that was quackery. That was junk science. Yet, I bet there's at least 50 people in this room through the practice of these two chiropractors whose whole life was turned around because you were taught how to go to a place of cause and no longer use an effect. Now, I'm not going to get into an argument with the FDA here today. I don't want to do that. But I do know that something is happening in their offices because you're getting people to the place of cause. And that is a shift of the collective consciousness in the world of medicine as I see it today. Rob, you want to answer that question of where you've seen the shift and where you think we might be going?
So I see it going both ways. There is a definite shift. I love places like Harvard has the Mind Body Institute. Stanford has a Mindfulness Institute, and they're paying attention, and they're really studying this at the highest levels. And I hope a lot of other places follow suit and pay more attention. So there is definitely a shift in that direction. Simultaneously, the consciousness rebels a little bit, and if you look at our current society, and if any of you dare watch the news, the polarity is real, and there's a whole other side to it too that wants to mandate things and wants to make one way the only way. And I think this last election cycle in particular brought out, or the last two election cycles brought out an exposure. We've never been more connected, and we're really, really polar on two sides of a lot of issues in life. And the invitation is there for the consciousness movement that is growing, that's never been bigger, that's never been more connected, to reach out and love the other side too. And it's going to be a task.
I absolutely love an aspirin when I have a headache. Science gave me an aspirin. I take the aspirin. But I also love the practitioners in my life that have helped me to transcend the need for an aspirin, to know that there is a cause for my headache, that when I get in touch with that cause, the headache goes away. Both are gifts of God, I believe. Final question, and then we're going to go into meditation, is what is the most important thing that a group of spiritual seekers should know regarding healing, wholeness, and the relationship between our physical and spiritual beings?
I touched on this already a little bit, in that if we are made in the image of God and that God exists within us, that healing can come from that place. And so when we read in the Bible about the experiences that Jesus had as he went around and healed the blind or the lepers, that power was already in that person. It already existed in that person. And
Jesus told them that every single time.
Yes. And so what I think that he was a catalyst. As a healer, he was a catalyst to our own abilities. So it's about, I think, God in us. And I also see that perfection, if we're created in the image of God, being found in science. I mean, they're still discovering things. There's little things called V cells in our body. They're microscopic stem cells. They're very small embryonic stem cells, and they go to sleep the moment we're born. Well, because of some quantum stuff, they're discovering that these V cells can be woken back up using like a reverse laser, and which is just energy. It's just frequency. And so these cells that can be woken up within our bodies are 1 day old, and they can recreate, since they're a stem cell, any other cell in the body. They can, so we can grow ourselves new just by learning to manipulate the energy. And because those things already exist within us.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, every time I hear a new breakthrough scientific discovery, especially in the quantum realm, I just kind of laugh and say, God's really having fun with us today. It's like,
so
that
true.
wasn't there yesterday. Here it is. Have fun.
play with this for a while.
You know, it's just mesmerizing. It's amazing. I think the most important thing, from my hallucination, is to remember that you are physical and you are non-physical, and both have pieces that matter and need acknowledged and need addressed and need participated with. And I see you in me, and I see me in you, and I acknowledge our disconnected parts, and I see God in us.
Both Rob and Wendy are going to be available to talk to you after service if you wanted to explore these ideas more. Better yet, get a card and go into their office, because I've sat at both of their feet in their offices, and my life is forever better as a result. And that's the commercial. Here's the most important thing I want you to know and answer my own question is, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. In the beginning was thought, possibility, spoken word, empowered by a divine potentiality. And through thought, through reasoning, through intellect, through wisdom, and through spoken word, God is given life in you, around you, and everywhere. We're going to take this idea into meditation.